Okay, I see our time clock is set here to 6 minutes. As per the order that was agreed upon in advance, I'm going to ask Stephen Lewis to start us, and I'm going to take my seat. Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudyard. Fellow colleagues on this debating panel, I'm going to speak with almost supernatural rapidity in order to encompass the ideas I have within the time available. I've even written opening remarks because of my sprawling lack of intellectual discipline. This morning, Dambisa, Moyo and I did a dry run for this debate on The Current on CBC Radio. It was pointed in places, but effortlessly congenial. Dambisa thought that perhaps we should give you your money back at the end of this evening. The simple truth is that Dambisa Moyo has written a book that frames this debate. It raises a number of interesting issues. I disagree with much of it. I find many of the statistics suspect and at times misleading. But I have none of the jugular instinct that some of her more frenzied detractors have displayed. For that, I apologize to my friends and family who looked forward to a classic maniacal spasm of the left. Aid to Africa has been wantonly abused over the decades. It has sustained countless despots of the most hideous variety. It has been an engine for corruption, although no more an engine than private capital. It has also been used by the international financial institutions under the guise of structural adjustment programs to do great damage to Africa's social sectors. But there's an important distinction to be made. All of this says nothing about the intrinsic nature of aid itself. It says everything about donor governments, multinational corporations, and the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, who were perfectly content to use aid in the most manipulative and destructive ways imaginable. It takes two to orchestrate dictators, corruption, and Reaganomics. In those particulars, there is some agreement. What Dambisa Moyo's book fails to acknowledge, I say respectfully, is the huge impact aid has had on the humanitarian imperative. Millions of people living with AIDS alive today who without aid for antiretroviral drugs would be dead. Millions of children immunized against fatal diseases. Over 30 million additional African children in school since the year 2000. Modest reduction in extreme poverty from 58% to 51% between 1999 and 2007. 12 million orphans with the prospect of food. Malaria death rates cut in half in countries like Rwanda and Ethiopia over the course of just 2 years because of insecticide-treated bed nets. I could go on ad infinitum. This is aid. Aid that gets to the grassroots, aid that transforms hope in communities. It is no small matter. It is no band-aid. And of course, aid does much more. Dambisa Moyo makes the point that Botswana is the best example of an African government, democratic in character, using a modern mix of investment and free markets to build a strong economy. But what she doesn't say is that Botswana has diamonds. And what is also not said is that just a few years ago, Botswana had the highest prevalence rate of HIV/AIDS in the world, almost 40% of the population between the ages of 15 and 49 infected. And President Festus Mogae actually used the word extinction when talking of the future. What saved Botswana? Aid. What made it possible for Botswana to transition to a vibrant mixed economy? Aid. What has happened, of course, is that in the last decade, aid to Africa and elsewhere has become much more focused, monitored, and intelligently applied. Oddly enough, Dambisa Moyo's book feels curiously out of date, but she remains unhappy and unrepentantly suspicious of aid playing any useful role, urgently looking forward to the day when it's removed from the agenda. So her book contains a number of alternative prescriptions that we'll doubtless discuss during the course of the evening. Let me try to give you a preview of the highlights. Dambisa Moyo suggests that African governments should raise money by issuing bonds on the capital market. I ask, what markets would those be? A year ago, perhaps. Now, hardly a chance. Capitalism has proved itself a touch quixotic, not to say mean, brutish, and ugly. Dambisa Moyo suggests Africa secure foreign direct investment, but it's just not available. Try as Africa might, it has never been available. Africa's share of world FDI is now 1%, and it's not for lack of trying. The countries are too small, the regional groupings ineffectual, the sense of risk overwhelming. Dambisa Moyo says trade is the answer. Who can disagree? But the Doha trade round is in collapse, and there's not the slightest sign that either the United States or Europe is prepared to relinquish agricultural subsidies in order to give African agriculture a chance to export. These are grand designs, but they don't work in practice. I'm a socialist. I'm an expert in grand designs that don't work in practice. Dambisa Moyo says China is Africa's salvation. We'll come to that. I don't share the enthusiasm for China as Africa's new neo-colonial master. To do Dambisa Moyo justice, there's more, ranging from microcredit to remittances to savings. But I have to say that given the state of the world's economy, we're going to need aid for a very long time. And the effort should be to make aid more effective, not to expunge it from the balance sheet. Let me end on a personal note. I share the sense of anxiety, frustration, and rage about the future of Africa, especially the next generation of whom Dambisa Moyo speaks. I worry greatly about the quality of political leadership in Africa. I worry even more about the world losing interest in Africa, and I sure don't think that celebrities are the answer. Believe it or not, I've been going back and forth from the African continent for almost exactly 50 years. And I have nothing but admiration for the intelligence, sophistication, and resilience at the grassroots, especially amongst the women of Africa. There has to be a way of getting aid into the hands of the grassroots, into the hands of civil society. It would open the doors to other economic designs and transform the continent. That's what we have to concentrate on. That's where aid continues to do far more good than harm. Thank you.
Hey, that was pretty good.